Hey, this is part 3 of the Iowa DNR pheasant survey. In this survey, it's more questions and answers. We get into the survey numbers, and the big thing is we start talking about what can hunters expect for the 2022 pheasant hunting season. So it's a sure watch, and we appreciate you joining us in this channel.
Hi, this is Tim and Joel. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses, a podcast about the outdoors, hunting, and being a steward of the land.
Hey, if you like what these two dumbasses are doing, please hit the like button and subscribe today.
Timbo, what questions do you have?
So Todd, with regards to, I've heard mixed things, so you're the expert here. So whether I have, let me rephrase that. How is the population of, I know we said we're focused on pheasant, but pheasant and quail impacted by the number of hunters? So let me add a little more context. If I have hunters out there, and let's say I have my property and I have a covey of quail, and I don't want to go out and hunt those covey of quail because I want them to be back next year. Will that, if I let them sit, and not hunt them, will I still have a strong herd or a strong flock?
Yeah, so great question, Tim. I mean, I get that a lot about, can we kind of stockpile critters for next year? And the thing to understand with things like pheasants and quail and cottontail is most of them don't live much beyond 2 years. So they're lucky if they get to reproduce once in their life. So it's really hard to not shoot them 1 year because odds are they won't be around the next year. It's just they have a really high turnover rate, which isn't a bad thing because they tend to produce a lot of young. So, I mean, they kind of offset their high mortality rate by producing a lot of young. So that's how they counteract it. So they have large nests and lots of young. And so, but, if we have a really bad winter or bad spring, that means we might have a whole bunch of individuals that don't reproduce and the population can fall pretty quickly. But it also means we have a really good winter or we have a really good spring with it. I mean, they seem to like explode because that's just how they're built. And so a little bit different than deer and turkey, they can live to be 5, 6, 8, 10 years old. If they miss a reproductive cycle, the next year they can go again or the year after. But most pheasant hens, they're born 1 year. Hopefully they survive long enough to nest that following year and produce babies and carry the population on. And odds are they probably won't make it to the next year. And so that's kind of why we really focus on habitat, trying to put the best habitat we can out there, winter survival, good nesting. And we try to set the seasons accordingly, knowing that about the species. So with like pheasants, where sex really is easily identified, we, target the males because they don't really contribute to nesting. I mean, they breed the females, but beyond that, they don't help raise the chicks. They don't incubate the eggs, anything like that. And so that rooster-only harvest really protects that critical important of that segment, the females. So, but you get into species like quail and huns, where you can't tell sex on the wing. Then we have to be a little bit more judicious and kind of look at season length and bag limits and try to make sure that we don't overharvest, because hunters could theoretically overharvest. But generally we don't see it. People ask, well, couldn't we shoot so many roosters that the hens wouldn't be bred? There's been research done on that. Really, you have to get down to a ratio of about 10 hens per 1 rooster before you start impacting fertility and stuff of the eggs. And through our surveys, hunters have never been able to get beyond about 3 roosters per 10 hens. We've never even got close to that 1 to 10. And a lot of years it's 5 to 10. So no impact on the reproductive side of it as far as roosters and getting hens bred. So kind of in a nutshell.
So the message I'm hearing from you is generally speaking, is if you have those animals, those little critters, as you said, on your property, or you want to go hunt them, you're not going to impact the population.
General rule, I mean, when we talk about things like quail, if you've got a farm, you've got 2 or 3 coveys on them, we'll probably recommend that you probably don't shoot more than 20% of what you think you have out there. I mean, the coveys, if they get shot down too much, generally combine up with other coveys to survive the winter. And so they're pretty adept at, surviving Mother Nature. But rule of thumb on quail is about 20% harvest, 30% somewhere in there. So if you got a 10 bird covey, you can shoot 2 or 3 and you're not really impacting what's going to happen next year.
The way I shoot, they're safe.
Well, I think with most hunters, that's probably the case. So.
Yeah, Tim, he clearly hasn't seen us dove hunting lately, right? Yeah, for sure. Hey, Todd, we've got a gambit. I've got several more questions, but I know there's a lot of our listeners going to be listening to this podcast and like, hey, boil this down to me, Todd. What can I expect here in about 30 days in the state of Iowa for this year's pheasant season? Am I gonna see more? Am I gonna see less? Or what am I gonna see when I go out there hunting?
I got to speak in a couple terms. First, I'll talk statewide. Our counts are essentially unchanged statewide from last year, and last year was our best harvest in 13 years at almost 400,000 roosters. So counts being the same, I think that's setting this fall up to be pretty good. Looks like we're in a drought still. Looks like combines around me are rolling already this week. And so I think a lot of crops will be out by the time season gets here. And that always improves harvest on the opener. Birds got less places to hide. So, I'm thinking it's looking pretty good. Now to break it down regionally, I clump all of our data together to get that statewide estimate. We saw some increases and actually over toward Iowa City and down toward Burlington there. So, hunters down in that part of the state might actually see a little bit of an increase compared to last year. Now, if you go to like Northeast Iowa or Central Iowa here or down toward Osceola, we kind of saw a little bit of a decrease. So it wasn't big, but, you might see fewer birds, but I'm not sure if hunters will notice it a whole lot, but there could be. And then the other regions of the state are pretty much spot on with last year. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, lack of dew can kind of influence our counts. And we certainly saw that in parts of South Central and up in Northwestern Iowa. So actually the counts may be better than what we counted just because we didn't get the birds to the roadside to count them. So, but overall, I think we're setting up to have another great fall as far as bird hunting.
Yeah,
I do have one more question before you go in there, Jake. So what % get harvested of our harvests in the first week or first month, whatever makes sense?
Yeah, so we do ask that question on our small game survey. How many birds did you harvest of what you harvested in the first 9 days? So basically the first 2 weekends of the season. And it hangs in there pretty steady at about a third. So those 400,000 birds we harvested last year, a third of them were harvested by day 9. So, a lot of activity there early in the season, but, still great hunting throughout the rest of the year too.
A lot better shooters than you and I, Jake.
A lot. A ton.
Hey, thanks for watching part 3 of the Iowa DNR Pheasant Survey episode. If you're interested in any of these hats, write us an email. And we've got our merchandise in our store, which is in the link down below.
Thanks for listening or watching our show. We have some exciting topics and guests coming up. We ask that you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
We look forward to hearing your suggestions for topics,
Questions and comments. This is Two Dumbasses signing off. Until next time,
be safe,
have fun, and get
outdoors.
outdoors.